some incidents that occurred long ago in the Old Testament. And that's because Paul is writing this book and saying how foolish the Galatians are for turning away from the gospel of Christ to another gospel, if you will. And we understand that at that time there was a pressure upon the early Christians who were being converted to conform to the Jewish law. And we talked last time, I don't know how many of us are tempted to follow the Jewish law, or how many of us have heard preachers and others trying to influence us to follow the Jewish law. Probably not. And so what is the lesson for us in these verses and in these chapters? And ultimately, what is what's the problem with these false teachers? We can say, well, as students of the Bible, we can say the law had its purpose, and we're going to go into that in great detail. But what's really wrong with going back and following the Jewish law? What do you miss?
It seems to me that you always had to be thinking for forgiveness again and again, and you had to re-sacrifice every year. It wasn't complete. It wasn't perfect.
It wasn't a once for all forgiveness. There was a concept of forgiveness under the law. We read Psalm 32 talks about forgiveness as a current thing there, but really the point that I think he's getting at here is grace versus works. And that's a tough thing to accept, even today sometimes, to accept a gift. I was thinking, sometimes it's hard, it's a challenge for us to give. Maybe we don't want to let go of those dollars that go in the collection plate. We can make use of them. Or maybe, our time is precious. And so it's sometimes difficult to give of ourselves as we should. Patrick talked about that this morning. But yes.
I was just going to say, do you think sometimes it's hard to receive too?
That's just a good second. That was just exactly my next sentence. It's hard to give, but sometimes it's hard for us to receive also. Maybe there's the concept of the self-made man, or the self-made person. Nobody helped me. I earned everything that I have. And I don't owe anything to anybody, that kind of an attitude. And we're all tempted to be self-sufficient, or to think of ourselves as self-sufficient.
I think we like to, it's almost like having it gives us confidence if we think, oh, we're checking off all the boxes, and okay, I've done this, so I'm good. But if we don't have that as a kind of I guess you could call it think of it as a foundation, we don't feel confident, and maybe, we're always questioning, well, am I really saved? Have I done enough to be saved? But again, that's something we don't need to.
So under the law, there was that concept that if you keep the law, you've kind of earned salvation, and you miss the grace and the givingness of God in that way. We were talking about that years ago in school, and talking about some people get into their professions or their jobs and say, well, I've earned everything I've got. I've got a home, yes, I've got a car, and I've got a bank account. I've earned all that. And then somebody said, well, what about that education you received? Some of us received an education at the state university where the tuition cost when I started there, when I started, was $96 a quarter, $288 a year. This was University of Illinois in Chicago. So that's what
So somebody was subsidizing, is that what you're saying?
somebody was paying for that. Somebody was paying all those teachers for all that property down on the west side there. And think a little further. What about growing up? Did you pay for that? Did you pay for the food that you ate at home for however many years, 18, 20 years? Some of us have a situation where some people that didn't have to do so went into an institution and picked up an infant, named him Alan Bain, and took him home and raised him. And so what I'm saying, some of us were adopted, but regardless, you don't really earn all of that. So we have many obligations, many ways in which we need to give thanks for grace and for gifts. And ultimately, we can give the glory to God for all of that. There's probably many other ways, yeah.
Do you normally start with a prayer? We had someone who has a prayer request. Do you normally start with a prayer at class or not?
We can.
It's me.
Do we have a prayer request? We can stop right there. Do we have a prayer request?
Yes,
Okay, sure.
it's my sister, Jane.
Okay, is she on our list? I don't think.
I think she's been taken off since, 'cause